All right, let's switch gears and talk a little bit about the Charlie Kirk letter to Benjamin Netanyahu. That was another big story that happened the other day. The New York Post published the full letter. Now, if you recall, the Benjamin Netanyahu immediately after Charlie's assassination had read a few lines of this, and the Candace Owens, as well as some others, had called on him to release the whole letter. And there's obviously, with something we've talked a lot about on this show, there's just like a very interesting story. This is something that's been covered pretty extensively by Candace, by Megyn Kelly, by Tucker Carlson, and we have on the show as well here talked about just like the dynamic of what was going on with Charlie Kirk and his young people, Israel bleeding support amongst his young people. And so anyway, this letter, the New York Post published this letter. Now, did you read the piece, Rob?
I did.
Yes. Now, I did notice in there, correct me if I'm wrong, I read the piece twice looking for this, but they did not explicitly say where they got the letter from. Like they kind of like sorry, go ahead.
No, I just jumped to reading the letter. I didn't even read their characterization
of it,
I'm reading, but I did pick up on that. It wasn't clear. I was just going to go, if you want to take it as fact that this was actually a letter from Charlie Kirk to Netanyahu, here's my thought about it. But, they didn't really validate.
No, but they did seem to just present it as fact. Yes. We have obtained the letter. This is what the full letter says. And all I'm saying is, by the way, I said that not on air, but I did just privately say this when Candace first called for Netanyahu to release the letter. I always thought it was like, yeah, but like if the letter comes back just saying none of the stuff you're saying's in it, you're just going to say that this wasn't like if the source on it is Netanyahu, then it just seems like a lot of people would think there's a possibility it has been altered or something like that. Now, I don't know enough, and it doesn't explicitly say. I'm just saying, like, if the letter was written to Benjamin Netanyahu, who has a copy of the letter, unless is like, oh, Turning Point had a copy of it too, or something like that, which it certainly was not explicitly said in the piece. So that'd be the first thing. I will say though, just assuming that's not the case, which I don't know that it is at all, this seemed to fit in, like, kind of be a piece of the puzzle that fit kind of right into what would have seemed reasonable to me. It's true. It does show you that, like, Charlie Kirk is calling, in a sense, for like Hasbro to get their shit together. He's like, look, like I'm in this position of supporting Israel, and you guys are he's saying this in a very diplomatic, kind way, but he's like, you guys are getting destroyed. And he doesn't exactly say this, but it did seem to me to be like a heavy implication that he's listing out the talking points. He's going, look, man, I'm taking questions from young people, and here are all the questions that they have. And then now, he doesn't exactly say it, but he's kind of like saying, like, we got to have a response to this because right now we don't have one. Now, that is reading between the lines a little bit, but I think, Rob, you read the letter only a little bit. Like, that's kind of what he's saying the whole time. You guys got to find a way to completely reinvent how you're countering this stuff. Like, what are we talking about doing here, man? Because you're getting killed in this information war. And I just think that I don't know, there's something interesting there in this story that it still does show, because the story, when people were trying to make the, like, Israel killed Charlie Kirk claim, like, as I always said, it was like, there was never any evidence for that. There still isn't any evidence for that. There's not really a strong reason to even suspect it or be looking for evidence. But hey, if you want to look for it, you find some, I'll certainly take a look at it. There's no reason to suspect that as of right now. Aside from that, though, there just is a really interesting story about this guy and the dynamic of what was going on. And like we've said before, it all seems to come to, essentially, yes, Charlie Kirk is the Big Tent Republican guy who's trying to get people to vote for the Republicans, Donald Trump last time, JD Vance, or whoever next time. And he's got to deal with young people. These young people are abandoning Israel in droves for obvious reasons that we cover at length on this show. And yet he knows that he can't, he has to somehow try to facilitate that. Like, you can't have a big tent that doesn't include Tucker Carlson or Megyn Kelly or Candace Owens on the right wing. It's just not enough tent left. They're too big a portion of the thing. He'd already decided he's keeping Nick Fuentes out. He'd already decided there's this young movement that I don't want to be a part of. So he's in this position where I got to at least be able to moderate a debate on the topic. So he's in this position. Then he's getting all types of pressure because that's not good enough. You know what I mean? And his hardcore backers want him to. They insist that he treat Tucker Carlson like a Nazi. And he knows he can't do that. So he's in this impossible position. And here is this letter where he seems to really be, again, Rob, you give your thoughts after this. I don't think I'm mischaracterizing this. He seems to be pleading with Netanyahu for some help. Send me some backup here. I don't know what to do. And then offering some help of his own. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on the letter?
That was my takeaway, was that it felt like a letter to corporate, either before someone's going to quit the team or someone who still really cares about the company, but just sees misdirection. It did not seem like he was uninterested in continuing to defend these perspectives, but it was a letter of, hey, you're making my job impossible. And you guys have to figure out how to start doing a little bit more, because I can't just win this fight. Now, what I found most interesting about the letter was in his appeal for help. I think he's asking Israel to come up with better talking points on questions that they know that they can address. And that's why they're leaving it for people like Charlie Kirk or others to kind of talk on their behalf, because it's a little bit like Joe Biden on the border wall thing. You can lie about that topic for 2 years and go, no, we care about border security. No, there is no emergency. No, there is no problem. And at some point, if you're actually doing the thing that people are concerned with, the truth does come out. And it's same thing happened with COVID. There's some storylines where, if you keep saying, hey, I'm interested in peace, but then you keep just killing people, at some point people are like, well, you just keep killing people. And so the problem is governments like Netanyahu, I think they're more interested in censorship because they can't actually justify what they're doing when you're asking questions of, why is this a strategic partner? Why is this in the U.S. best interest? Why should we be supporting this with all these innocent? I can understand you're hearing these questions from kids and you're like, I don't have answers to these questions.
Yeah.
I need some answers. And I don't think Netanyahu. Now, listen, Netanyahu somewhat has taken this advice. He's going on American podcasts. And I don't know that they're creating better social media content from that video we saw the other week of.
No, it doesn't seem to be going great.
Yeah,
but they
somebody
do seem
sat
to be
down in a
trying.
meeting and said we need gay guys sipping out of straws. So I don't know that Israel doesn't seem to understand American. Well, I think they understand the money side of American politics. I don't think they understand the influencing kids side of it. But I think some of these questions they can't actually answer.
Look, part of it, and this is, I used to use the example. Because the 2024 election, really, there was something really fascinating about that dynamic. But where you would see, like, the Tony Hinchcliffe one to me was always a really good example, when MSNBC and CNN went into overdrive about saying that this was a commentator who made a comment at a Trump speech, and then, like, if you had seen the video, it was clearly, however you felt about the appropriateness of it, it was clearly a guy doing a Don Rickles, I'm roasting every group comedian thing. And the video itself had blown up so much. I mean, the Madison Square Garden rally was live streamed. It had across social media. It must have had hundreds of millions of views on it. And then some show on MSNBC has like 100,000 people maybe watching it. And they're trying, most of your own audience has seen this on their phone already. And so there used to be a dynamic where you had 100 million people. The alternative people, there was no internet. They had like a newsletter or something. They had a few dozen people. And so if you just said it was like this, everyone heard that and no one saw the truth. But now you're trying to play that game when you're the newsletter and they're the mainstream media. And it just doesn't work anymore like that. And there's just a lot. You would just watch like this inability to grapple with the new landscape. And This happens a lot too when, just the accounts like Tom Elliott, such a great account at this. I always just love, it's one of the best Twitter followers, because he'll just make these compilations of what the media was saying. Like the old game used to be, you stay on message and you repeat the same thing over and over and over again. And that way, if it was said all day on CNN, everyone's at least heard it. And it's in some part of your mind, if you've heard it a lot, you go, oh yeah, and it's a consensus. You know what I mean? But now one dude like Tom Elliott on his laptop can just cut together a compilation of all of them saying the exact same thing. It goes super viral. It gets way more views than they're getting on the corporate media, and it exposes them because everyone's going, oh, look, they all got the memo, and now they're all saying the exact same thing. It was sharp as attack, sharp as attack, sharp as attack. Why did everyone choose that same phrase? That was a coincidence? You know what I mean? Like someone smarter than me who's like a statistician, to explain to me what the mathematical odds are that every single person at the corporate media all thought of sharp as attack as the way to describe Joe Biden. They all just happened to independently come to that one slogan? No, there was a memo, like clear, it's just obvious. And so just for example, bringing it back to the Netanyahu thing. So Netanyahu turns around. This is what used to work, Rob, is that so he comes over here, then the next day he goes and gives a speech in Hebrew, right? Because this is where you always know who Netanyahu's talking to based on whether he's speaking in English or Hebrew, right? Is he talking to America or is he talking to Israelis? And so he turns around and brags to them. The next day after this, he brags to them that we've achieved all of our objectives. We've gotten it put in writing, and we've got all the Arabs on board. It's the greatest achievement ever. But now you're in an internet world where that goes super viral with the translation right underneath it. And so it's just, it's like the atrophy is part that they were dominant and monopolistically so for so many years. And also there's just this inability to adjust to the new dynamic here. And I think, like you said, they just don't really have any arguments to combat this stuff. And so they don't have the option to play the game the way it's being played now, like to go and win. And to go win the argument. And they're just in a very, very tough spot.